Thank you.
Okay, well, you're welcome.
Well, it's great to be here in Mexico. It's my 5th or 6th trip. I had a business here probably 7 or 8 years ago, and so it's good to be back. It's been a few years since I've been back, so I'm happy to be with you today. And how's everybody doing?
Good.
Yeah? It's that afternoon. It's a little time for a little rest right now, isn't it? Everybody all right? Yes. All right, good. So I want to talk today. Let me raise your hands. Do you have a business already? And who's thinking of a business? Okay. And who doesn't know? All right. So it's pretty evenly split. I want to talk to you today a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey and why I got into entrepreneurship and why I would never go back and do anything else but be an entrepreneur. I'm getting ready to start my 4th business in 2018. We're working on it now. And, when I left working for someone else, I was a little nervous. I was a little nervous about how that would work out. But I can tell you that it was the best thing I ever did. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. So I want to talk today about 3 things. And I'll get to those in a second. But I wanted to say something real quick. We live in an age where almost 95 million young people around the world, 95 million young people around the world are unemployed. In a lot of places, entrepreneurship is really the only answer to that crisis, to that problem. Governments and countries and business can't support the number of jobs that we need. And so entrepreneurship is really one of the answers, I think, to this big problem that we're going to see around the world. And the other thing is, when my father was coming up, he worked for a company for 40 years. He got a pension. The expectation was that he would have a good life. He would come out of university, get a good job, work for a company for his career, and get a good pension and have a good retirement. Let me ask you here, can you work for a company now and get a pension in Mexico? No? It's very hard, right? And I think that's the same crisis that we find around the world. So one of the problems I think that you're going to face as you grow up and you get older is that you're not going to have we're not going to have that same kind of stability that his generation had. And it even translates into my generation. Most of my generation doesn't have a pension. And so it's incumbent upon us to secure our retirement, to secure our future. And again, I think entrepreneurship is the answer to that. So I want to talk about 3 things. Why you should become a business owner and an entrepreneur. A couple tips that I've found have been useful for me in running businesses. And number 3, leading the useful life as a business owner. So let's talk about number 1 really quick. Why choose business or entrepreneurship? So can somebody tell me why they would choose to be an entrepreneur? Anybody? You are a very sharp young man. I can say that because I have a lot of gray hair. Most people would say because of money, right? If you'd asked me when I was 20-something why I wanted to start my own business, I said, well, I want money. I want to get paid. I want to make a lot of money. That's changed. I've changed my perception, but that's a good answer. Anybody else?
Well, to not leave behind self-believing transnational companies, sustainability, and our future ecological growth.
Okay. You guys are so much smarter than I was when I was 20. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that concept in a few minutes because I think that was a big one for me. Anybody else?
Because you want to solve something that you care about.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the idea that everyone has. But I think it's, well, personally,
Okay. Those are all great answers.
You have more security having a company than being an employee. They can fire you.
Man, I don't need to do this presentation because this is all I was going to talk about. So, we'll get to it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
¿Alguien puede traducirme, por favor? No entiendo, no sé hablar muy bien. ¿Son tan amables? Yo traigo en las manos la tecnología para poder crear electricidad a base de la fuerza de gravedad de la Tierra, sin
Sí.
combustibles fósiles, no es eólica, no es solar. A base de eje empírico.
He's saying that he has in his hands the power to convert energy from using resources from the gravitational waves of the Earth without using ¿qué? ¿Energía qué?
La fuerza
Fossil
a base de la
fuels,
fuerza
fossil
de la gravedad de
fuels.
la Tierra, vamos a imprimir el aire, vamos a crear energía
Gravity.
eléctrica,
Gravity.
no sin combustibles fósiles, no es eólica y ni es solar.
It's not solar, not eolic, and it doesn't use any fossil fuels.
Okay. Good. All right. So, number one, I think for me, the reasons that I've found entrepreneurship to be the way for me is that I'm challenged. I am challenged every day, unlike you wouldn't believe. It's every day is different. It's the hardest thing that you will ever do, but at the same time, it's the most rewarding. You know, you said something that was interesting to me. You get to see a product that you create, and I will never forget the first time that I walked into a store, a Toys R Us, and I saw a product that we had created or thought about, and we had drawn it on a napkin in a bar over a beer. And there it was on the shelf. And it was the hardest thing in the world to get that product from that napkin, that piece of little paper, to the shelf. And it was a challenge. And for me, if you like being challenged, who here likes being challenged? Right? If you like being challenged, entrepreneurship is for you. Building something that lasts a lifetime. I also wanted to build a company that was going to be my legacy, right? I wanted to leave something behind that I knew would outlast me and that was greater than me. And for me, building something that was mine, that we created from scratch, you can't describe that feeling. Number three, the other thing that gave me a lot of satisfaction was creating jobs. You know, when we used to do company picnics once a month, and to see all the kids and the families and the people that depended on us to make good decisions and to drive this company and to grow this company was very, very, very rewarding and on many levels. The other thing that for me was, you know, I had always worked for someone else, and I was a manager, and so when I started my own company, I became a leader, right? And there's a big difference between a leader and a manager. And I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to lead something and lead my own organization, make those critical decisions, set the agenda, set the policy, set the tone for where we wanted to take something. When you work for someone else, you're not often able to be a leader. You're following someone else's dream, you're following somebody else's decisions, and you're implementing them. The other thing I did want, and I still want, is that financial freedom, right? That financial independence. I also knew that working for someone else, I wasn't going to have the ability to make unlimited income, right? I was going to do very well. You could still do very, very well working for someone else, no doubt about it. But if I really wanted true financial freedom, to be able to do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, then entrepreneurship was going to be the way to do that. The other thing was solving a problem and making other people's lives better. Now, making toys, and I had a tequila company here in Mexico, wasn't solving the world's problems. I wasn't solving hunger or disease, but there was no other feeling like seeing a kid smile when they played with your toy. And yes, they played with it for about 5 minutes and then moved on to something else. But for that 5 minutes, you could bring joy to somebody's life. And that was very satisfying. Ruling the world and improving on your personal power. Can anybody say what I mean by that? Anybody understand what I mean by that? Yeah, so I was having a discussion at lunch about something that happened to me that made me realize that we were starting to have some influence. I was in my office one day and my assistant came in and she was very white and she was very frantic and scared. She said, "The governor is here." And my eyes got this big. I said, "The governor of who? Of what?" I didn't understand. Because normally with high-level politicians, you have to go through all these channels to get an appointment or to get to a meeting, and you have to go see them. They don't come to you. They don't come to you unexpected. But the governor of the state had come to my office to see and talk to us about our success and how we had grown a small business into a bigger business. And she didn't tell us she was coming. She just she was in the area, and she knew that she needed to talk to us. And what I realized after that meeting is that policymakers and government officials and politicians wanted to now talk to us because we had become successful. And they wanted to understand how we had done that. And what I also realized from that was that when you get to a certain level of success, is that you can influence policy, that you can influence government, you can influence your community around you. And so for me, that was another powerful reason why I think entrepreneurship is very, very important. Any questions or any thoughts? So if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, if you don't have that business yet, if you're wondering what you're going to do with your life, look at that list, think about that list, and see, is that something that you like, that makes you more interested in entrepreneurship? Because that's what you gain. There are a lot of other things that you gain. You gain freedom of your time. You gain freedom of being able to do what you want when you want to do it. There are a lot of benefits of entrepreneurship that I think, and I hope that you try, because the world needs people who solve problems. I think entrepreneurship is about solving problems, and I think you can be an entrepreneur in just about any field. You can be an entrepreneur in academics. You can be an entrepreneur working for the government. But I think I highly encourage you to think about starting your own business. Yes?
You just answered my question.
Okay. What was your question?
If politics and entrepreneurship could ever have a solid relationship, could ever get along with somebody?
We can hope. We can hope. All right. So I'm going to skip a few. I'm not going to cover all of these because I really want, I only have about an hour, and I really want about 30 minutes of question and answer with you guys so that we can get to the burning questions that you have in your mind. But I do want to go through and highlight probably 5 or 10, 15 of my top things that I think as business owners and business people you really have to think about and that you really have to focus on when you're running a business. These are the keys, I think, to success, the keys to, when I work with small businesses and entrepreneurs like yourself, these are the things I see these are the areas I see people make mistakes. A lot of these are areas that we make mistakes in, and I want you to try to avoid those. So, number 4, writing a business plan. I know that you hear that all the time, you have to have a business plan. And I'm a big proponent of having a business plan. My first one was 630 pages. It was way overdone. Our business plans now are no more than 20 pages. But what happened to us in that business is we covered everything that could happen. And when you're prepared for whatever might happen, the way that you respond to crisis, the way that you respond to problems and challenges is going to be a lot better. And there's a statistic that I think is really telling. Businesses that have a business plan that they use, it doesn't sit up on a shelf somewhere. My first business plan sat up on a shelf and collected dust and was a good doorway. We put it in the door at some point to keep the door open. But businesses that have a business plan and use it are 30% more likely to succeed in business. 30% more likely to succeed. Now, everybody says be a risk taker. That's great. But you're also supposed to manage your risk. And anything that you can do to help you manage that risk, you should try and you should do. One of the things I see businesses fail at very often is money. And that's mismanagement of money because they don't have a budget. They don't have an idea of what it costs to run their business. They don't manage their money very, very, very tightly. So, to give you an example of this, even when we were a $30 million company, we had the same furniture, the same office chairs, the same vehicles. We drove used vehicles. We did not buy expensive things for the company. Okay? We managed our budget like we were a startup, and we managed our budget like we were poor all the time. We managed things to the breaking point. We didn't hire until people were about to revolt. We didn't buy something until it was completely broken. Okay? So money is one of the biggest areas where businesses fail. I see it, I'm consulting a client right now, a young guy who's in his early 30s, and his business has done really, really well. So I went to lunch with him a few weeks ago. He says, I'll pick you up at your office. And he picks me up and he's got a brand new Maserati. Okay? Now, he's in the retail business. And the retail business in the United States, and probably here too, is trending this way. Right? Everything's going online. And I yelled at him because instead of buying an $80,000 car, that's $80,000 he should be putting in the bank so that he can pivot and change his business when he's going to have to change. So he's going to come to me in a couple years and say, what's wrong with my business? Why don't I have any money? And it's because, right? So don't do that. Don't do that at all, please. It is the biggest way that you can fail. Because you will need that money, believe me. For those of you who are looking for investors and looking for partners, this is an area where I think you need to put some thought in. Don't just take the first offer that comes across, okay? I can tell you some of the biggest business failures that we've ever had were because of the partners that we brought on because they had the money. And my tequila business here in Mexico is a prime example. We took on somebody, we took on the money. We didn't like the people that were investing, but we wanted the money. And that relationship completely broke down, okay? And so when there's when you don't, so if you don't like the people, or if the people don't make you feel comfortable, if you do not connect with them, don't take that money because that relationship will break apart, okay? So just be aware when you take on investors, take on somebody that connects with you, that you connect on a personal level with, that understands what you want to do, okay? Just be cautious of that when you take on investors. Set up a support system. Anybody guess what I mean by that? So I was terrible at time management and terrible at, anybody heard the term work-life balance? Okay? I was terrible at that. And, you know, early on in the first couple of years of the business, you know, it was nothing to work 18, 20 hours a day. And forget about all the other important things in your life, right? Family, friends, kids, right? All that stuff that's pretty important. And so, set up a support system, and we still do this today in our business. Set up a support system that can help you manage that, because if you're like me, when you get into a project, you're all in, right? You're completely committed, and you'll work 10, 20, 30, 80, 100 hours a week. You'll work, you get very little sleep, and you'll completely commit. Anybody else like that? Yeah. All right. So we set up rules in our business now. We have to take holidays. We have to take date nights with our significant others. We have to take weekends, at least one weekend day a week. You know, we have to take those holidays, those vacations, and we make that an absolute priority in the business. My partner and I. And so we set up a support system to sort of we can manage that with ourselves. So all I'm saying is, if you're like that, set up a good support system. If you have friends and family that support you, make sure that you get out and you set up a system where you guys go out for a Friday night for dinner. You go out for drinks with your friends. You know, don't forget to go to that football match or that movie or whatever with your friends. Make sure that you set some time aside for those things that are important. I won't say much except that get a lawyer, okay, and an accountant. Why do I say that? Because they can save you so much money and time down in the long run. And what I mean by that is, you know, set the business up structurally right from the beginning. You know, make sure that your contracts and everything that you have is set up properly. You know, we spent a lot of time at the end, you know, in the middle of the business, trying to fix what we didn't do right in the beginning in that first business. So what we learned was, when we start out on a business, let's get it right from the beginning. Make sure that we're structurally in the right place. I mean, we could have saved so much in tax revenue if we just structured the business right from the beginning. So if you set up right from the beginning, it saves you a lot of time and money. Get a good accountant so that you can set up your chart of accounts properly. You get an accountant so that you can set up your books properly, so that you get started on the right foot. The other thing about that is, an investor, particularly in the U.S. and in other parts of the world that I've worked in, you know, you're not going to get looked at by an investor. There's not anybody that's going to touch you unless structurally, legally, you're set up properly, and financially you're set up properly. So if you're looking for financing, you're looking for money, you're looking for investment, we have a private equity guy in here somewhere. Where is he? He'll tell you probably the same thing. Now, he's not going to touch a company that isn't set up properly. Take advantage of free resources. When I was starting my first business, we didn't have incubators, we didn't have accelerators, we didn't have programs like this at the university that help you set up your business. Take advantage of that as much as possible. What you learn in these programs, I wish I had had an opportunity to be part of. You have access to people that have been in the business world, that know how to do this stuff. Talk to them and lean on them. Ask them for the advice. Take advantage of every free resource you can. Because when you get out on your own, it sucks, you know. So take advantage of all these free resources. You're going to avoid a lot of mistakes and a lot of expense that you would normally not have. One of the things I learned when I started a business was to learn to say no. Anybody guess why that's important?
Sometimes you just want to do everything
even though you know you cannot. So if you learn to say no, especially to yourself, like I cannot do this right now, it will make you focus more on what you're doing.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons why learning to say no is very important. I'm like a kid in a candy store, you know, and when opportunities come our way, I love every single one of them. I think every single one of them is really interesting. But I can't do all of them. I can't be involved in all of them. I can't invest money in all of them. But what I really am talking about here is your time. What I learned was, you know, when I became the leader of the company and the founder of the company, everybody wanted me to help solve problems. Everybody wanted me to sign off on something. And it took me several years to learn this lesson. But when I started closing my door and said, don't bother me, solve your own problems, the company culture changed. Right? People started taking ownership. They started doing the things and not coming to me for a yes or a no. That also saved me time because I didn't have to be involved in every single little thing that was going on. It also helped me manage my time because what I realized, I would come into the office at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I got to my to-do list, which was the critical things, the critical relationship management, the critical sales, the critical problems that had to be solved. By the time I was solving everybody else's problems that day, I didn't get to my list until 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. So that's why I was having 2 work days. That's why I was working 16, 20 hours a day. So learning to say no helped me manage my time better. I also became very, very strict and almost militaristic on meetings. You know, meetings lasted no longer than 20 minutes. And if you couldn't get it said and done in 20 minutes, and if you didn't have an agenda and a purpose for that meeting, we didn't have a meeting. I also kept phone calls to 5 minutes, right? If you can't get out what you need to get out in that 5 minutes on that phone call, you don't really need to have it probably. I also keep a very stringent to-do list. I have, I think, ADD. I don't know what that is in Spanish, but attention deficit disorder. So I have to manage, you know, if I get on Facebook in the middle of the day, I could spend 2 hours going down some crazy, you know. So I have to be that sort of strong about how I manage and how I manage my time. So, you know, so learning to say no is a very, very powerful way for me to be and actually get the most out of myself and to be the most efficient that I can be. So learning to say no is very important. It also saved us a lot of money because when you open a business, so many people come for a handout. You know, people want more. They want more food in the kitchen. They want this. They want that, right? And you have to learn to say no because you have a budget. Going back to that budget, you have to set a strict budget. And all these things, interestingly enough, help set the company culture. We can talk about that a little bit if you want, in a few minutes. But learn to say no. The other thing I learned was learn to seek honest advice. Who here likes to be criticized? Anybody? You like to be criticized? You like criticism? Okay. Well, you're special. I don't know that many people that like criticism. But it is very, very, when you're a business owner, you really should seek it. You should seek it from your customers. You should seek it from your staff and your team. You should seek it, honest advice. You should create a company culture where people can come and tell you how they feel, tell you what's going on, tell you the truth, tell you what they think. That's the only way I think that you can create an environment where people feel like they can be honest. But I do think be open to criticism. Don't punish people if they're honest with you. I highly recommend being open and honest and having that kind of environment. So most of us aren't going to start the next Facebook. We're not going to start a business that's the next best thing. We're not going to start businesses in industries where there's absolutely nothing. Most of us are going to start businesses where there's competition. We're going to start businesses where there are others like us. So what I want to talk about a little bit is delivering, how you deliver the product and service. Most of the way that we're going to differentiate ourselves is how we treat our customers and how we deliver the product and how good the product is. So when you're thinking about this, what I can tell you is customer service is in general, I think, the best place to be where you can differentiate yourself. Go out of your way with your clients. I'll give you a couple of examples. So when we, in 2010, we were struggling. We were in a pretty bad position, actually. And we had gone to great lengths to hold on to all of the customers that we were able to gain. So much so that we were losing money in our delivery process. But we were physically getting in our trucks and delivering the product. And I was working with a company, we were delivering a product that was about 1,000 miles away from our headquarters. And we had been delivering to this lady for about a year. Small toy store. And she called one day and she said, you know, I want you to come to New York to the biggest toy fair in the world, to the toy store. It's called the New York Toy Show. I want you to come to that this year. And I said to her, I don't have the money to come this year. We don't have any money to buy a booth. It cost $2,000 to get a booth, and it costs probably $2,000 for the week to stay. And then we have to make product. So this is going to cost us $6,000 or $7,000. We don't have it. She said, I promise you, you need to come this year to Toy Fair. So we scraped up as much money as we could do. We actually ended up sleeping in our van for a couple of days. But what I didn't know about that customer, because we had treated her so well and had gone to great lengths to get the product to her for over a year, she had become the president of the Small Toy Store Association in the United States. And in their general meeting at Toy Fair, and this was in the middle of the recession, she stood up and she said, this is the only product that is selling in my stores. These guys will go to any lengths to deliver the product to you. They're great to work with. You have to buy their product. And so, just with one customer, we went from a $100,000 company to a $9 million company in a matter of a couple months. One customer. Because of the way we had treated her. The second part of that story is there was no way for us to handle that growth. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the money to buy the product. Because we had always paid our vendors, and because we had always paid our bills to them when we probably couldn't and shouldn't have, we were able to go to all of our vendors. We had 6 key vendors, and every single one of them gave us 6 months credit. We actually got in a car right after Toy Fair, and we went to each one of them. We drove to their headquarters in each one of those and asked them for the help. And because we did that, and because of the way we had paid them, even when we were struggling, every single one of them came to our aid. So I can't reiterate enough, like, customer service and building those relationships with your customers and your vendors can actually save your business. Okay? The other thing is, I think, is critical to business success is networking. This is my last point, and we'll get to questions. Networking, I think, can be, again, one of those things that can help you grow your business. I have a friend of mine that I went to high school with. We didn't think much of him when we were in high school. He was sort of the class clown. And I think he was voted least likely to succeed. But he has grown a real estate business into one of the biggest in South Carolina, if not the biggest. And the way he's done that, he's not done it through advertising. He's not done it through any other means, but he goes to at least 3 networking events a day. He's involved in every charity. He's involved in every civic organization. He's involved in everything that he can be involved in. And anytime anybody in those organizations is thinking about real estate, who do they go to? And he's been doing this for years and years and years and years. So what that tells me is that networking can be really, really powerful for your business. I can tell you that it's how I get consulting jobs now, it's how I get coaching jobs now. And most of that comes right straight off of LinkedIn or through a network of people I've met around the world. And I'm in a very network-driven business. Okay, it's how I've grown my social media following. It's how I've grown what I'm doing today. So I can't reiterate enough how important your network will be. The people that you're in school with today, and the people that you grow to know when you get out in the world. So always work on that network. Always work on those relationships. And make that a really primary focus because those relationships will be critical, okay? When you're growing your business, where do you draw your people from? And you draw them from your network. So when you need a vice president, when you need a co-founder, when you need somebody to help you technically, most of that's going to come from people you already know or people that are in your circle. So I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you the people with the better networks, they can grow pretty amazing businesses. So I'm going to end and stop talking at you now. I had another part, but I'm going to skip that because we're getting short on time. And I want to get to your questions. Yes?
Which stage of your, like when you're starting a company, which stage do you think is the best to start getting investors, like from the beginning, or when you already have like certain experience and you can like show your investors like some facts?
We didn't get investment until we didn't even get looked at until we had an EBITDA of $3.5 million in the bank. I think it depends on the industry, honestly. In the consumer products industry, what I didn't know when I first started that business was that was a business or type of business that investors were very nervous about, right? And until we had a longer track record and we were a lot more advanced and a lot more mature, did we really get anybody to look at us. There are tech companies today that are getting funding right before they even launch based on concept. So my advice, I guess, is that it depends on what you have and how, how game-changing it is, how, what problem it solves, how unique it is. I think that all plays into when to start looking for financing. And I guess it also depends on what your capacity is. I mean, do you have the resources to create a first version of a product? If you don't, you may have to look at borrowing money or getting people to invest. Look, I mean, I think the reality is, in this day and age, even still, where there's a lot more access to private equity and to angel investing and to all these other funding mechanisms. And there are a lot of funding mechanisms out there. The reality is most of us aren't going to create a business that's even going to get looked at for massive investment or for a big investment. You know, most of us are going to create businesses where we have to do it the old-fashioned way. We have to bootstrap it. We have to borrow from family. We have to borrow from friends. We have to work 3 jobs to save enough money to do it. You know, most of us have to take jobs and then work on the side to create that product. So that's the reality, I think. I think there are a very small few of us that have an opportunity to seek investment at an early stage.
Do you have any advice on networking? Like, what's your first impression, or when somebody's looking for you to invest in their company, what are you looking for in this person?
The people. I almost care less about the investment or the product. First, I care about whether or not I like that person, whether I feel like that person can accomplish what they're trying to set out to accomplish. And I think every investor will probably tell you the same thing. It really is about the team that you have around you, the team that you want to grow, your vision, and your leadership ability, your ability to sort of understand what's important, focus. You know, I think success comes down to, and this is what I think people are looking for. I think business success comes down to a few things. It comes down to the leader and the founders being able to focus in on and being able to deliver a product and a service or whatever it is, and do that well. The ability to focus and scale the business. And I think that's what people are looking for. I think they're looking for people who are disciplined, right? They have self-discipline and that's why business discipline. I think they're looking for people who are really focused. And so I think those are the things that people are looking for. I think those are the qualities that people look for.
What advice would you give us in order for us to identify business opportunities?
What's that?
What advice would you give us in order for us to identify business opportunities?
Business opportunities? I think you have to, the successful entrepreneurs I know are pretty relentless about educating themselves. They read prolifically. I mean, I think most business entrepreneurs, they read probably 50, 60, 70 books a year. They're reading trade publications, they're reading industry newsletters, they're reading everything that they can get their hands on about what they do. So I guess what I would say to you is never, once you leave university, never stop your education. You know, don't stop picking up books and reading them. You know, you're not going to have a professor telling you to read anymore. You have to educate yourself. You have to be aggressive in finding out what's going on out in the business environment. And going back to your question on networking, which I think is another part of your question, I think being involved in organizations. So if you are in a particular industry, you know, joining that association, going to getting involved in that association, I think is smart. I think that can open up opportunities. I think networking groups, I know there are a lot of professional networking groups out there that you can be involved in. You can't be involved in everything, but find the one where that is more relevant to you and what you want to do, the industry that you're involved in. There are a lot of young people in networking groups. So just get involved. Get involved when you leave school. Get involved now. Most of these organizations welcome new members. And again, it gives you an opportunity to find out what's going on in the business environment in your area. So.
Well, I have a question about how can you get a great mentor? First, how do you meet him? And then, second, how do you convince him, or how do you get him as a mentor?
I'm glad you asked that question. Mentorship is important, and I always say, and I was just talking to a group this past week about this, don't be afraid to approach influencers and people in your industry. Don't be afraid to ask for a connection on LinkedIn. Who here has a LinkedIn page? If you don't have one, shame on you. Get one. Get one together. Don't be afraid to ask them out to coffee. Don't be afraid to ask them to be connected on social media platforms. Because, and I'll tell you, I do this, and this is what I do every day. I reach out to at least 5 new people on LinkedIn every day. I get up pretty early. I go to work. One of the first things I do as part of my daily routine is I look for people on LinkedIn that can help me get where I want to go. If there's a conference that I want to speak at, if there's a journalist that I want to talk to, if there's somebody in the business that I want to have a connection with, I reach out to them. I send them a note via LinkedIn and say, hey, can we connect? I'd like to chat with you about this. Now, I also engage with the people that I feel are important in my business and professional life. So you can look at it a couple different ways. I would look at it, I would take maybe 3-tier approach. So the first tier would be identify 20 people that are key to your business success. All right? These are people that you absolutely need to know in your business area. Okay? These are people that you can't not know. That's tier 1. And you better reach out to them, engage with them on social media, like their post, send them notes. One of the things I do with people that I want to connect with is, hey, I read that article that you wrote, or that story that was about your business. That was great. Thank you for that. That was very informative. You know, and I start a relationship with them on social media like that. And believe me, they pay attention. They look at their Twitter feed. They look at their LinkedIn feed. They know who is corresponding back and forth. Prime example of that, it led to a pretty big business deal for me. Does everybody know who Damon John is? On Shark Tank? Okay. Damon was on the TV program. I started reaching out to him via social media. Eventually that led to a face-to-face meeting where I actually had a business I wanted to show him that was in his sector. He didn't like it, but 2 weeks later he called me and said, look, I've got this young couple that's coming on Shark Tank. They've got a toy product. It's going to happen. Can you make it for them? And I said, yeah. Okay. So, you know, that all came from reaching out to somebody on social media and just being a good correspondent via social media. So don't be afraid to reach out to people that are important. That second tier can be 50 to 100 people that are going to be good to know. So for example, you want to go into media, right? You could put a list together of 100 people in media that would just be good to know. These people aren't going to maybe necessarily help your career, but it would be good to follow them, right? Good to piggyback off of their networks. Good to see who they're following on social media. So it'd be good to be connected. So that second tier are people that you need to know and that you need to follow, right? Maybe they produce content that's important to your business, okay? That's your second tier. The third tier are people that are sort of in your network, right? There are people that you know, that maybe they're in a different industry, maybe they're in something completely different, but they're still good to know. You don't put a lot of energy into that tier. That tier kind of is over here, but those first two tiers are really critical to your success. So I would look at it that way, and I would look at really putting some thought and energy into your social media platforms like that. A couple other things about LinkedIn. I was working with a young lady a few months ago on her LinkedIn page. On her LinkedIn page, she had a picture of herself in a bathing suit. Okay, not the place for that. Okay. LinkedIn, and again on all your social media pictures or pages, your picture is the first impression that you make. And unfortunately, we're human beings, and we're going to judge people almost instantly on their appearance, right? You know, I look at you, and I don't even consciously think about it, but I make a judgment about you, the way you look, the way you present yourself, right? We can't help it. It is what it is. It's microseconds. We make judgments about people. So put your best face forward, so to speak. And make sure that picture is professional. And we could talk. I could do a whole class whole semester on LinkedIn, and how to do it. But please make sure that you put the best face forward there. Yes.
You mentioned that nowadays there are computers and accelerators. Which are the main elements that an incubator must provide to entrepreneurs so that they can be successful?
Again, I think picking an incubator in a program like that is kind of like picking a business partner or an investor. I think it comes down, and I never was in one, so I don't know that I'm the best to give you advice on that. But I've worked in several of them. I've given talks in several of them, and I've worked with entrepreneurs who are involved in them. All I would say is treat it like you would treat picking an investor. You know, it's got to feel right. I'm a big proponent of going on your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, right? And so that's how I would.
So one of your checkpoints was about being flexible.
Yes.
You said about you become militarized and strict about it. What was that checkpoint?
Flexible meaning in business. So as much as I'm sort of militant about how I manage my time and what I allow myself to do or not do, in terms of business, our business, the first business we were in, we pivoted 3 times. And so we weren't afraid to say, time out, this isn't going to work, or this is not going to work long term. We need to make a turn right now to get ahead of it. We saw in that business several times different trends coming along, different things happening in the world that were going to affect our business. And so we weren't afraid to be flexible and say, you know what, this business model that we're on right now has been great for the time, but we need to make a turn. And that's what I was getting at in that. You have to be flexible enough to make that turn. Yeah. Tom?
Queremos agradecerle a nuestro invitado, a Red, que quisiéramos sobre todo tener la oportunidad de hacer un breve paréntesis. Sabemos que hay muchas preguntas y quisiéramos que ustedes nos hicieran llegar las mismas a través del correo electrónico, y con todo gusto resolvemos las inquietudes. Tenemos un panel en puerta, ya tenemos a nuestros invitados, y quisiéramos nada más darle la oportunidad a Miguel, nuestro invitado de la Embajada de Estados Unidos, que nos haga un comentario con respecto a un invitado especial que tenemos.
Thanks, Rick. So, yes. So we're going to get some questions for you by email, if you're okay with that. And I wanted to introduce Felipe Gomez, who just made it from the US today in the morning. And he's a very accomplished CEO of his own company, FGC. He works with NASA, he's been with President Barack Obama. So it's a pleasure to have him here. Forbes 30 list of energy. So he's going to talk to you about GES, which is the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, which will take place in India at the end of this month. So please go ahead.
One thing real quick. Guys, don't be afraid to contact me on LinkedIn or social media. We've got my connections up there. So don't feel free to reach out. Don't be hesitant. Send me questions if you have them. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days to respond, but I'm more than willing to take questions from you online, through email, through social media. And so it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you. So.
By the way, Red has been participating at GES, so please compliment whatever Felipe says.
Hola a todos, muy buenas tardes. Creo que voy a hablar en inglés por el beneficio de Red. Like Miguel was saying, I'm a Mexican-born entrepreneur. I grew up by South Florida, near Miami area. I ended up starting a company trying to commercialize a technology to improve efficiency jet engines. So it's sort of a little bit different take on entrepreneurship. I started with something that was essentially just a research project. I had no idea I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was just a nerd, big engineer doing research. And at some point I ended up realizing that the best way to move this forward was to put the market into the development of the technology, right? So I found myself going from an engineer to being an entrepreneur and figuring out, okay, I know the science, but how do I figure out the business side, right? How do I build something that people are actually going to want? And that's been a pretty incredible journey, which I'm not going to talk all that much about. But one of the things I've seen is that this is a great time to be an entrepreneur, especially if you're young. One of the things, I think someone asked the question of when to raise funds. The good thing about being students is that our time is free, so we can pretty much do a lot of work without having to charge a lot of money. I think there's a lot of value in being a student entrepreneur and starting something when you're still in school, when you have resources. People will mentor you just because you're a student. And not only that, but you also join sort of a worldwide group of innovators. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to solve some sort of big problem, and our society needs to do that. So if you take that leap, and if you at some point you become an entrepreneur, you'll see that there's a whole community to support that. Not just in the US, there's a big emphasis on bringing entrepreneurs from other countries. People who have traditionally been representing entrepreneurship, right? Not every good idea is going to come from Silicon Valley, so I think people are starting to recognize that. That's the idea about the summit that I'm going to be at the end of this month. I think Brad has been there before.
I'll be there.
You'll be there as well. Okay, great. Usually, I believe the different embassies, the different U.S. embassies around the world pick some of the entrepreneurs there. I've met the ones from Mexico. They're way more incredible than anything I've ever done. And you'd be surprised at the things that some people are doing. But just wanted to put that in the back of your minds that if you end up becoming an entrepreneur, if you end up moving something forward, remember that the network is global, and there's places that you can reach out to outside of Mexico, outside of the U.S., really across the whole world to help connect you to resources that are going to help you develop your business.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's a pleasure. Okay. Fred, we want to express our gratitude. Here is a present for you. Size not affecting quality, but be sure that your book will be a classic book. Okay.
Well, thank you.
So for our students, and all of them will have your book under their pillows. Okay. So they need to work and to be reflexive. These tips are key tips. Okay. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
We're going to do a selfie. Drop the mic. Let me get this.
This is the Borrego power. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Bueno, y también queremos darles un aplauso muy especial, sobre todo a nuestros invitados de la Embajada de Estados Unidos, a Carolina en especial y a Miguel. Muchísimas gracias por su apoyo y esperamos contar con ustedes. Muchas gracias a todos.
You guys come down for a selfie. Come on down. Did we Let's see if we can all get the picture. One, two, three, now. Hey. Should we do a funny one? Yeah. Another? One more. All right, funny one. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Ah, sí. Qué padre. Gracias, ¿no? Estoy en mi maestría. Estoy en Case, en la Bella. No en Miami, pero es la del gobierno. Exacto, así como sus imágenes de una hora. Siguen los motores andando. Y eso gasta mucho. Entonces estamos en esa clase para mirar cómo se ¿estás ahí esperando? Estamos empezando, de hecho, primero en las turbinas, porque es complicadísimo. Tenemos ahí una empresa chiquita que hace turbinas.
So I'm giving away a free book. Who wants one?
I want one.
Let's see. All right, here we go. Let's do a contest. All right, I'm gonna do a number behind my back. 3, 7, 3, 4, 7, 10, 0, 1, 0. You said 6. All right, you got it. Thank you.
Sí, ahí que a continuación tendremos el panel de